They confiscated her garden gnomes for ugly aesthetics. She swapped to flamingos. Now HOA is suing her. In the pristine neighborhood of Whispering Pines, Colorado, where every lawn was a showcase of order, 64-year-old retiree Eleanor Ellie Bennett added a touch of whimsy to her life. A widow since 2020, Ellie had spent years cultivating a garden filled with a collection of 12 ceramic gnomes, each about a foot tall, placed among her roses and daisies. The gnomes, costing her $300 over a decade, held sentimental value. Each represented a memory, like the bearded one bought after her husband's passing, or the one with a shovel marking her first gardening success. Neighbors often smiled at the quirky display, and children in the area loved spotting new additions, dubbing Ellie's yard Gnome Village. Ellie kept the gnomes clean and unobtrusive, believing they added charm to the otherwise uniform lawns. But the Whispering Pines Homeowners Association saw the gnomes as an eyesore. The HOA president, 55-year-old Roger Klein, a former interior designer with a rigid vision of elegance, received a complaint from a neighbor who called the gnomes tacky and aesthetic pollution. Roger consulted the bylaws, latching on to a rule that stated, yard decorations must align with community aesthetic standards, with non-compliant items subject to removal and a $250 fine per violation. Though the rule was vague and rarely enforced, other homes had yard art like wind chimes or statues. Roger deemed Ellie's gnomes unacceptable, claiming they lowered property values. He saw it as a chance to enforce his ideal of sophistication, ignoring their sentimental significance. In early December 2025, as snow dusted the ground, Roger sent Ellie a letter citing the bylaw and demanding she remove the gnomes within 72 hours or face a $250 fine for aesthetic violation. The letter also warned that non-compliance would lead to HOA confiscation. Ellie was heartbroken. Her gnomes were her joy, a connection to her past. She called Roger, explaining their meaning and offering to limit the display to 5 gnomes. She invited him to see their charm, but Roger was unyielding. "They're hideous," he snapped. "Get rid of them or we will." Ellie appealed to the HOA board, sharing photos of the gnomes and their history. But the board, swayed by Roger, upheld the decision, escalating the threat. The situation turned grim. On a freezing Monday morning, while Ellie was at a knitting club, Roger arrived with an HOA crew. They confiscated all 12 gnomes, boxing them up and leaving a notice. A $250 fine for the aesthetic violation, plus a $150 removal fee, totaling $400, and a warning that the gnomes were now HOA property. Ellie returned home, her heart sinking as she saw her empty garden. Only muddy patches remained where her gnomes once stood. "They stole my memories," she whispered, clutching a photo of her favorite gnome. Determined to reclaim her yard's spirit, Ellie replaced the gnomes with 6 pink plastic flamingos, costing $60, hoping their vibrant color would comply with the vague aesthetic standards. She placed them among her flowers, a defiant nod to her personality. The flamingos sparked a new battle. Roger, furious at Ellie's workaround, deemed them equally tacky and filed a lawsuit against her on December 15, 2025, seeking $5,000 in damages for ongoing aesthetic violations and legal fees. The lawsuit also demanded the flamingos' removal and a permanent ban on yard decorations at Ellie's property. A neighbor, 27-year-old barista Lily Harper, filmed the flamingo setup and Roger's crew inspecting it, capturing Ellie's distress and the lawsuit papers. She posted it on X with the caption, "HOA took her gnomes, now suing over flamingos. Unreal gnome ban." The video went viral, gaining 15 million views in 48 hours, with the hashtag trending nationwide. Outrage spread, with users calling the HOA petty and vindictive. Local news in Denver covered it, interviewing a tearful Ellie who said, "These were my joy. Now they're suing me for flamingos?" A design expert on air criticized the HOA's subjective standards, noting the flamingo's popularity in suburban decor. The community rallied behind Ellie. Lily organized a protest outside the HOA office, where dozens gathered with toy gnomes and flamingos, holding signs reading, "Let gnomes live," and "Stop HOA bullying." Some placed flamingo stickers on mailboxes in defiance. A GoFundMe to help Ellie fight the lawsuit raised $10,000 in a week, with donors leaving messages like, "This is absurd and win justice for Ellie." The story gained regional attention, with the Denver Post and 9 News running headlines like, "HOA confiscates gnomes, sues over flamingos," and "Colorado widow battles HOA over yard decor." Ellie countersued the HOA, determined to keep her flamingos and reclaim her gnomes. She hired lawyer Karen Phillips, who argued that the HOA's actions constituted theft, emotional distress, and an abuse of power, and that the aesthetic rule was arbitrarily enforced as other decorations were ignored. Ellie sought $20,000 in damages, the return of her gnomes, and an injunction to allow flamingos. The courtroom filled with supporters holding mini flamingos in solidarity. Karen presented Lily's video, photos of other yard art in the neighborhood, and Ellie's emotional testimony. "My gnomes were my heart. Now they're attacking my spirit." Roger, representing the HOA, showed no remorse. He claimed the aesthetic rule was to protect property values and that Ellie's defiance with flamingos justified the lawsuit. He cited the bylaw, arguing the HOA had the right to enforce its standards, even through litigation. The judge, a strict interpreter of HOA contracts, ruled in favor of the HOA, upholding the fines, the lawsuit, and ordering the flamingos removed, with Ellie liable for $5,000 in HOA legal fees. Her countersuit was dismissed, and the gnomes remained confiscated. Ellie left the courtroom clutching a flamingo, the loss of her garden's charm a heavy blow. The ruling sparked online outrage, with number gnome ban trending again, fueling calls for HOA reform. Homeowner rights groups condemned the decision, arguing it stifled personal expression. In Whispering Pines, Roger tightened rules, banning all yard decorations and increasing fines to $400. Ellie removed the flamingos, her garden now bare, and her spirit dimmed. She stopped gardening, the joy stolen. Whispering Pines, once a place of quiet charm, became a battleground, with residents fearing HOA overreach on their personal touches. So who's right, Ellie and her gnomes or the HOA's aesthetic rule? Share your thoughts below. Please share this video, subscribe to the channel for more HOA madness, and let's keep the fight alive. Thank you for your support.